Good morning.
Good morning.
One more time, just so you know that your voices are there. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Eastrose Fellowship Unitarian Universalist on this 27th day of February, 2022. We do come filled this morning with deep anxiety and sorrow for the war on Ukraine. Let's take a moment to feel the presence of each other and to recognize how blessed we are to gather in peace in this moment. Let us acknowledge also that these lands where our fellowship gathers and that are home now to our widespread communities were for thousands of years traditional village sites for other peoples who made their lives here. The Multnomah, Wasco, Wishram, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, so many names that still identify the places we live with and in. So many stories stretching back. The coming of our non-native ancestors forever changed the arc and spirit of differing but now blended stories. We thank the original caretakers of this land and their descendants who are among us still. In peace, may we share this land and honor one another. Let us join now in worship. Each Sunday, we join with Unitarian Universalists across the world to light a chalice of welcome to all who gather today and gratitude for all who have gathered before. For those present in this chapel and for those joining us from home, we light this chalice in this space that we create together. May all find welcome and connection, inspiration and peace, and may our light encompass all those in fear, pain, and anguish around the world. Thank you, Mary. Good morning again, because we've had a few more add-ins since I said good morning a moment ago. So welcome to all of you. I am Katie Ten Eyck, your worship leader this morning, and I am joined by Mary, already providing our music, John and Phyllis back there providing the tech wizardry here, and with Sherry's help from the office to connect us to folks joining online, and to Bona's friendly face bringing us in together. Speaking today is our friend and master storyteller, Will Horniak. We are, many of us, familiar with the magic that he has brought us before through traditional myths, fables, and folktales, and how he helps us consider how the old stories provide insights and ideas for addressing our own lives. Will says, "Stories creep under and over the walls that divide us. The more stories we have, the more ideas we have for meeting the twisting plots and myriad characters in our own lives." Will last spoke to us in late October. That was during the Celtic New Year, Samhain, and Halloween. That was fascinating. In May, he will join us again for Mother's Day. And today, he will explore storytelling as a spiritual practice and what it means to discover our own sacred inner stories. Now, Will has not come in his invisibility cloak today. Will is on the road. He has pre-recorded his messages for us, and they will be shared when the time comes. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining us here in the chapel or joining us from home or elsewhere on YouTube. Now, we opened the church building again for services just this past Sunday after being out again for a while with COVID concerns. So please be considerate of our guidelines as we keep this space safe for all. We are still enjoying joys and concerns by filling out one of the blue forms and that I believe are available in the lobby if you want to share a joy of concern, and you can put it in the offering basket when it comes around. At home, you can write in the YouTube chat, which is the panel, the side panel there on your screen, and we would need to have that from you before the offering so we can share joys and concerns, which come very shortly after that. Sherry in the office retrieves them and brings them to be shared with the others. Also, those of you that are joining on YouTube, it's really nice if you can identify yourself to one another in the chat, and then we also later know you were here too, and we get a count of noses here and noses there, and feel one another's presence. I wish we had a camera set up to view the congregation here so we could see one another and share that view with you out there. I guess I would have to have everyone stand up and parade across the front to see who all are here, but I have a wonderful, I can't count you, but it's a wonderful filling of the group here. Thank you for being here. We are also singing again, so join in the hymns here in the chapel, but do remain masked. For those of you who prefer to use hymnals, you will find several behind on the seats available along your row, and folks online, just sing out and wake up your household, okay? And, Bonna and I will be bringing the offering baskets to you. As you can see, we kind of avoid the passing mics around and passing basket back. Anyway, so those are some of our, just for a little while yet, remaining safety concerns. And this, if all goes according to plan and with the necessary volunteer assistance, we will be sharing house-made coffee, tea, and cocoa after the service again, starting next Sunday, March 6th. Not today. Yes. Yeah, just not enough applause and exclamation points for that. I had a lot in my script here. We enjoy that time. Okay. Opening words. These opening thoughts come from authors Jonathan Gottschall and Patrick Rothfuss. We are, as a species, addicted to story. Even when the body goes to sleep, the mind stays up all night telling itself stories. It's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head, always, all the time. That story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story. Join us in singing. You'll find May Your Life Be as a Song in the Teal hymnal, if you want to use that. Words are here on the screen. It is number 1059 in the Teal hymnal.
May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. May your life be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light and softly with the dawn, to sing awake the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. The stars, ever dancing circles in the night. Resounding with the dawn, to sing awake the light and sounding with the dawn, to sing awake the stars, ever dancing circles in the night. The stars, ever dancing circles in the night.
We have a story for all ages. And believe me, Jack, we're not going to forget that today. So now our storyteller will, with a story for all ages, will lead you to him with these thoughts from the great short story writer Eudora Welty. Long before I wrote stories, I listened for stories. Listening for them is something more acute than listening to them. I suppose it's an early form of participation in what goes on, listening. Children know stories are out there. When their elders sit and begin, children are just waiting and hoping for one to come out, like a mouse from its hole. Will.
A story for all ages. In a long ago time, there was one who was lonely and restless and deep and wide and powerful. His name was Ocean. One day he looked into the distance and he saw her, this beautiful woman. She was powerful and noble and regal, and her name was Mountain. He wanted to meet her, but he needed help, and he said, "Brother Sun, my brother Sun, come warm my waters." And Brother Sun did, and so mists and clouds rose. And then he said, Brother Winds, come carry me off towards Mountain." And Brother Wind came and did that. Well, Mountain was a bit afraid when she saw Ocean, these dark clouds and mists coming towards her, but he spoke to her the way gentle rain speaks. He wrapped her in mists. Wildflowers grew there. Streams began to trickle down her. He visited often. In winter, he brought blankets of snow. She was never more beautiful. She was never happier. In time, Ocean and Mountain had a daughter. They called her River. And one day, as a young woman, she said, "I will travel from the realm of my mother, Mountain, to the realm of my father, Ocean. I will bring those worlds together." She was an artist. She was a dancer. She was a sculptor, a singer. And on her long, long journey, she sculpted canyons and wide valleys. She carved deep pools. Where she leapt, she made waterfalls. Where she sang, there was white water. She was generous. She carried rich silt out and over the banks of her waters. And so the cattail reed and the duckweed grew there, the willow and the wapato. And in those places, duck and goose and merganser, great blue heron, eagle and osprey, red-winged blackbird, kingfisher, and many, many more came. Of course, there was beaver and muskrat now too, and river otter. Her waters teemed with fish like sturgeon and salmon and eel and trout. Everywhere that river went, she was generous. Everywhere, inside her, about her, there was abundance. At last she reached her father's realm, the ocean. And now the gifts between ocean and mountain flowed. The salmon nations they came, Chinook, Sockeye, Coho, and all the rest, from ocean to mountain, back and forth again, carrying the mysteries of the heights of mountain to the depth of ocean, carrying the richness of ocean up into the heights of mountain. For the salmon, they never forgot their way home. In time, people came, two-legged people came, and they would ask River, they would say, please, these reeds along your shore, these willows, they are good for shelter. May we use them? Yes, you would say. Take what you need. River, they said, these fish in your waters, they nourish us. May we use them? Yes, she said. Live beside me in a good way. Take your part in this web of life, and they did. She carried their boats, she watered their fields, and they knew that they only lived because of the gifts that River gave. And because of that, they gave her gifts. Gifts of song and ceremony and thanksgiving. They listened to her voice. They loved the many, many songs of River. Thousands of years passed in that way. But then more people came. These people didn't hear the voice of River. They didn't hear her song. Perhaps their own voices spoke too loudly. They didn't ask for what they needed. They took whatever they wanted. In time, they would just say, River, you are powerful. Turn this grist mill, grind our grain. River, you are strong. Turn this mill, cut our lumber. River, power our lights, run our factories, carry away our waste, carry our ships and our boats. And she did. River was always generous. But in time, the people choked her flowing waters. In time, River was filled with refuse and waste. In time, she was ill. She called one day to Grandmother Great Blue Heron, her oldest friend, and she said, Grandmother, the people who live beside me have forgotten the ways of living. They take without asking. They give nothing in return. My spirit is so weak, Grandmother, something must be done. The next day, Grandmother Great Blue Heron, though she was very old, she went to the river and she lifted her great wings and was carried like a kite into the sky. And though she was lost many, many, many times in the dark clouds and the storms, at last she found her way to the lodge of Rainmaker, who lives at the edge of the world. He had great respect for Grandmother Great Blue Heron. He brought her in and he said, Grandmother, you have journeyed long. You have journeyed far. Why have you come? And she said, River is ill. Her spirit is so weak. The people who live beside her now have hearts that are so hard, heads that are so large and stubborn. They take without asking. They give nothing back. Something must be done, Rainmaker. The next day, Rainmaker, he took his thunder drum and flew off. He gathered all of the cloud people together, the lightning people, the thunder people together, and they counseled. And they decided that they would make a rain of remembering. They gathered over the place where that river flowed, and for days the dark clouds piled up. Thunder rumbled and the lightning flashed, and finally the skies opened up. But that was a gentle rain. It was a sweet rain. It brought the people out. They looked up into the skies. And day upon day as the water fell, it seemed to wash the dust of forgetting from their eyes, the illusions from their mind, and the hardness from their hearts. And in time, when the rain stopped, they looked out and saw a river as if for the first time. And they realized what they had done. And then a second rain began to fall. It was the rain of tears that came out of their eyes, a rain of grief. Their hearts broke open. They say that in time those people returned to their houses, to their farms, to their schools, to their factories. But when they returned, they saw the world differently, saw river differently. And because of that, they began to live differently. Well, that's at least what the story says. It's only a story. But as a wise person, Barry Lopez, the writer, once said, sometimes a story can help us to reimagine our own lives. And that is the story of River, and thank you so much for listening to it.
May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. And we know that your financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. Our sharing partner for this quarter for half the cash in the basket is Snowcap. Snowcap was formed in 1967 to meet basic life needs for many struggling residents of East Multnomah County. Canned goods, diapers, foods, clothing, toiletries, toys. About 25 area churches, including Eastrose Fellowship, stepped up to identify those needs and to coordinate resources and volunteers to meet those needs. 1967 to 2022, 55 years of serving in community, and these needs are still with us. I just learned this week that SNOCAP is actually an acronym. I did not know that. It means Suburban Neighborhoods Operation Witness Community Action Program. There'll be a quiz after this service. SNOCAP. Vonna and I will bring offering baskets around to you here in the chapel, and we'll collect blue slips for joys and concerns at the same time if you have some thoughts you'd like to share. And for those of you viewing the service online, you can find donation options on the Eastrose website. First-time visitors, you are our guests. Please let the basket pass. Your presence truly is your gift to us today. We are grateful for the spirit of generosity that lives in so many forms: generosity of time, talent, willingness to serve, and love. The gifts of the congregation will now most gratefully be received. That was lovely, Mary. You entranced me, so I forgot my mask. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where sorrows are eased. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and concerns and acknowledge the mutual support of this community. Mary places a stone in the bowl for each concern shared or joy, and the water rises as our thoughts collect and we are lifted. I had a couple that were shared here, and I will note for myself, and I think for a lot of us, and for which I have really no words, war in Ukraine. It's terrifying, horrifying, heart-wrenching. Throughout the world, suffering and injustice, and a new one visited directly on a country by its neighbors. How can we not be overwhelmed? And what do we do? Well, do what you can nearby. Speak out where you can. Encourage where you can. Pay attention to each other. I also have shared Jana, Jack, and I, Zach, are moving to Kansas City, Kansas in July. Oh, my goodness. He says, we will miss this community, and you. You'll be hearing more from us after this service, I'm sure, having shared that. But we've got until July to change your mind, right? I will give more of this next thought as an announcement, but it does mention, as Mary has shared about our Ukrainian neighbors here in Portland area, the Ukrainian Bible Church, for one, that's here on Southeast, and ways to support them. So with those in your mind and heart, Mary places the final heartstone for the inexpressible that we feel. May we remember those who have spoken, those they have named, and all whose hearts hold things unspoken. Winds Be Still is number 83 in our gray hymnal. We will be sharing it on screen. Rest in this peaceful moment together, or join in the singing if you would like to.
Winds be still, storm clouds
And I welcome our speaker now, Will Horniak, with these thoughts from three writers and storytellers themselves, Maya Angelou, Sue Monk Kidd, and Joan Didion. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Stories have to be told or they die, and when they die, we can't remember who we are or why we're here. We tell ourselves stories in order to live.
Good morning, everybody at Eastrose, and thanks for the invitation to be with you this morning, in this format anyway. I do look forward to getting together again when we can see each other face to face and breathe the same air and all of that. So today's program is called To Tell the Holy, Storytelling in Spiritual Practice. And we all know that every faith tradition, spiritual tradition, religion has a host of sacred stories, a holy manuscript, you might say. I found out years ago by reading Parabola magazine that one particular writer anyway said that the word myth in the Navajo language actually means to tell the holy. And I think that as well as all the spiritual traditions having a holy manuscript, that there's also something like that inside of all of us too. Holy stories, holy lands, holy people that reside. And I do love to read the old stories from the spiritual traditions, you know, whether it's Genesis and the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, or the many tales of the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata. I love the Australian Aboriginal idea of song lines, that all of existence was actually sung into form. The vibration of song created matter. I think all of those stories attempt to help us to imagine our own lives, to help us to find our place in the vast cosmos. And I had a great professor of history at Marquette University when I went to school there, and his name was Robert Hay. He was from East Tennessee. And I'll never forget the first day of class, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe there are 4 questions we need to address ourselves to. And those are these. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? And what in the heck should we do while we're here? Furthermore, I don't believe science will ultimately answer those questions. I believe stories might be a better guide." I always loved how he spoke and how poetic he was in his teaching. But what I loved about that was that he helped me to realize that stories could be a valuable resource in helping us answer those questions, which I think, to me anyway, are ultimately unanswerable in any concrete, literal way. Those questions are things that human beings really can't wrap their minds around completely. So we approach them with imagination. We bring our imagination to them and use story and poem and song and metaphor to talk about them. And a great writer, Karen Armstrong, who wrote a great book called A History of God, among many things, she said in it that religion is as much an art as science. Religion requires a great deal of imagination and creativity. And I love that idea. Well, I also like the idea that it's important at times, I find anyway, I get inspired by, reading the Tao Te Ching, or reading the poetry of Rumi or Hafez or Pablo Neruda, or picking up the Bible, or playing with the I Ching. I think all those spiritual traditions, to me, help to nourish me. But I also think there's a host of holy stories that we all have. These are you might say moments when we felt like spirit broke into us or broke out of us. Some moment we had some soulful connection with the world, something like that. And are people that we know that stood as examples to us as being holy people, spiritual people. And one of the reasons I think it's important to remember that is that just as it's inspiring to consult the old traditions, I think it can be equally inspiring to be in touch with our own spiritual myth and our own holy stories. So, well, how do we do this? Well, I taught this program actually as a workshop years ago, and I did this. We had about 12 people in the workshop, and I asked them to write about 3 people in their life who they consider to be spiritual people. And I said, there's many, many forms of spirituality and spiritual expression. And just as one example, I talked about a priest that taught me in high school, Father Carlton Whitten. And he was a man of the cloth. He was a holy man. He was dedicated to service, but he was an excellent piano player. He directed the musical. He taught us Shakespeare. And he was a man who was, on one hand, meditative, and a man who you could see was devout, and yet he loved the world. He was full of joy. So that was just one example for me. So I asked them to write about 3 people. Took about 10 minutes to do that. And then the next thing was that tell us about the Holy Land for you. What places are holy places to you? And it can be holy for lots of reasons. Maybe it's some mountaintop that you go to meditate upon. Maybe it's a place where you met somebody, something happened. Who knows? Once again, there's many, many ways that lands become holy, or that we feel we're in a sacred place. What are some of those places for you, and why? Take us there. Show us what they feel like. The third thing was describe to us a couple examples of what you consider to be a spiritual experience in your own life. And these can be, miracles or calamities. Sometimes I say spirit breaks into us. Sometimes spirit breaks out of us. Sometimes we break down, and that's a way of having a spiritual experience. I also said include as well what I would call soulful experiences. Oftentimes where we may be in grief or may be confused, but we can also feel more deeply connected to the soul of the world, sometimes even through our tears. A teacher I had once said that a spiritual experience is sort of like climbing a mountain. You gain altitude, you get light, you get heat, warmth, you see further, you have a vision perhaps. Soul experiences are more like coming down the mountain, right? You get more deeply involved with humanity. You feel more deeply connected. So I just said write about a couple of those experiences, a spiritual experience, a soulful experience. And then the last thing was write about some spiritual tradition that nourishes you, whatever it could be, whatever books or poetry or teachings or dance or whatever. And then what's some practice that you have, some spiritual practice. And this could include, like I mentioned, carpentry. And that's a spiritual practice for me because it slows me down and I just get involved for hours and I feel connected to the eternal. I love working with the elements of the world. I love working with, dirt and concrete and wood. And I always feel like moments of creativity like that, of building things, that I'm in a timeless place. So that would be an element of spiritual, practice for me. So we wrote about those things. Now, for today, maybe to inspire your discussions, if you'd like, you might just consider one person in your life who had some type of spiritual expression or spiritual character that you noticed. And a second thing could be some place that is part of your holy landscape. And the third thing, one experience of maybe spirit breaking in or breaking out, or some soulful experience, a deeper connection to the world. And then the fourth thing is, what is a spiritual practice for yourself? It could be gardening, singing, whatever it is, but just to share that with one another. And I wanted to share one thing with you, a person who has always represented an aspect of spirituality to me. And her name is Naomi Shaib Nye. Some of you might know her. She's a poet. And what I've always loved about her is that she's a brilliant poet. She really is dedicated to her craft. But she's an even more brilliant human being. She's very inclusive. She's very warm. She's very humble. She's a great teacher. And she really helps to shine a light, I think, on the genius of other people. She wrote this particular poem that I'd like to recite for you. It's called Kindness. And it goes like so. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake with sorrow. You must speak to it until your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, until you know the size of the cloth. Only then is it kindness that makes sense anymore. Only then do you realize that it's kindness that ties your shoes and sends you off into the world to mail letters and purchase bread. It's kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world and says, "It's me that you've been looking for." And then it goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Kindness by Naomi Shihab Nye. Well, I wanted to tell you one other story as briefly as I can, even though it's a massive tale. I've told it as a performance, but it stands out to me as one of those old stories that I found that really helped to shine a light on a spiritual predicament and split that I had felt in my life for a long time. And to me, I think that's one of the values of stories, whatever they are, myths or fairy tales or fables or, movies or books, is that they can sometimes help us to reimagine our lives, help us to understand our lives better. And this was a story from ancient Ireland. It's called the Legend of Tuan McCarroll, and I'll try to condense it as much as I can because it's a long tale. So in the story, there's a priest. He's the head abbot of a monastery up in Moville, which is way up in Donegal. And his name is Saint Finian. Well, before that, it was just called Finian. Now he's a saint. It's one of the great venerable saints of Ireland, Saint Finian of Moville. But when he was alive, this was in the 5th century, after St. Patrick had come. And Finian was the abbot of Moville. And he found out there was a man in his own parish there that lived out in the woods who still practiced the ancient ways, the ways of the pagans and the Druids. And that was offensive to Finian. So he went out to baptize him, to convert him. And he got to the stronghold of this man, whose name was Tuan McCarroll. And he said, "Tuan, open your doors, let me in. I want to baptize you and bring you home to the one true faith." And Finian waited and waited, and finally Tuan opened a window up there on the 2nd story, and he said, "I welcome your new God into the world, but I am quite happy with all the gods that I have, and I don't need to be baptized. I've been baptized many times." And he closed the window, the shutter. But Finian wouldn't leave. He stayed there, and finally Tuan let him in. And Finian told him all about the life of Jesus Christ and the death and the resurrection. And Tuan listened for hours and hours, and finally he said, "That's a remarkable story." He said, "I want to thank you, priest, for coming, for sharing that with me. I have much to learn from it. That gives me a great deal. It's a wonderful story." But Finian said it's more than a story. It's the one true story about the one true God. And Tuan said, "Well, I believe there's many gods." And Finian said, "Well, tell me about your own life, because if I'm going to minister to you, baptize you, I need to know about your life." And Tuan said, "Well, sometimes it's better to forget than to remember." But Finian, he said, No, you need to tell me, who was your father, and tell me about your life." Well, Tuan went on this amazing story about how he first came to Ireland thousands of years ago and died and was reincarnated as a stag of the woods, died, lived another century as a boar, died, lived another century as a hawk of the air, died again, came back as a salmon of the sea, and in that way was swimming around, and finally was swimming in the River Boyne, where the king of Ulster, Muradac the Red, he caught him one day in a net and brought him home. And the queen of Ulster, she favored the fish, and she said, "That fish is for me." And she ate the whole thing over time. And in time, the spirit of Tuan went into her womb and grew. And then she gave birth to another human being. And Tuan McCarroll said, "And that's myself. That's how I came into the world in the form that you see me now." And the priest was sort of aghast at this incredible tale. And he said to Tuan, he said, but look at the good news here. You've become a man again while I am here. And so I can baptize you. And I can bring you home to the one true faith. So at last you can live again with your true Father in heaven. And Tuan McCarroll says, well, I am home. I don't need to go to some heaven. I'm at home here. I love this world. It's filled with mystery. I consider this earth to be the womb of life and the tomb of life. I've been living here for a long, long time, and I walk upon the graves of many who have lived before me. And I'm enchanted by this world. I love the mystery of this beautiful maiden, the earth, this goddess, the earth. I love every wind and weather of her. I love all the colors of her. This is my home. But Finian said, if you don't allow me to baptize you, you will know doom someday. And Tuan simply said, I've known doom many times, and it's never had power over me. I don't fear doom any longer. Let doom come. And they say with that, Finian, he crossed himself, and the two men sat quietly as the fire died out. And the next day they parted amicably. But Finian returned to the abbot he returned to the monastery of Moville, and Tuan McCarroll remained where he was. And they say Finian no doubt prayed for the soul of Tuan McCarroll for many, many years. But eventually Finian died, and eventually he became Saint Finian of Moville. And they say, as for Tuan McCarroll, nobody really knows what happened to him. Some say that he could be a hawk of the air, a salmon of the sea. Some say he's a bellying stag of the woods. Some say he's yet a fierce boar in the forests. But they say that Tuan McCarroll yet may be with us to this very day. Who knows? It's only a story. Well, I tell you that story today, or the gist of it, because I was raised in the Roman Catholic tradition, and I'm grateful to it for spiritual education and for many fine teachers and the example that I had of many people who were dedicated to service and to a life that was dedicated to something that was ineffable, that was spiritual, that was dedicated to the timeless ways, the timeless world. But also it was difficult for me at times because as Tuan McCarroll, I had a really profound relationship with nature, and even though I went to church a lot, I always felt like my real church was out in the woods. And so I really like it when I related to it when Tuan told that whole vast story of his relationship with the world, and then the priest tried to draw a circle around it and say, yes, but isn't it nice that I'm here to baptize you so you can come home to the one true God? And I like it because Tuan, he just, I think, drew a larger circle. He said, well, I am home. I don't consider this to be a rehearsal for another life. This is my life. And I'm quite content here. And I don't need to be baptized because life has baptized me. You know, he's been baptized many times through death and rebirth and death and rebirth again and again and again. And I also like it because Tuan said that he had much to learn from that story that was told of Jesus. He had much to learn. And yet he didn't agree with the priest that it was the one true story. Tuan believed that there were many stories and many gods as well. And his heart and mind were open to what all of them had to say. And so when I heard that story, it just, you might say, elucidated for me a split that I've had inside for a long time. And it was interesting to see it played out as a story from the 5th century. You know, this stuff has been going on for a long, long, long time. So hopefully, and I'm sure that many of you find stories that shed light upon your own spiritual history and tradition and that kind of thing. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today, and also for your patience in watching a video like this. And I wanted to finish with a prayer that is from Black Elk, the Oglala Sioux holy man. It goes like so. Grandfather, Great Spirit, once more, behold me on earth, and lean to hear my feeble voice. Lean to hear my feeble voice. You lived first, and you are older than all need. You are older than all prayer. All things belong to you. All things. The two-legged, the four-legged, the wings of the air, and all green things that live. You have set the powers of the four quarters of the earth to cross each other. You have made me cross the good road and the road of difficulties. You have made me cross the good road and the road of difficulties. And where they cross, this place is holy. Where the good road and the road of difficulty cross, this road is holy. Day in, day out, forevermore, you are the life of things. An earth prayer from Black Elk, a holy man of the Oglala Sioux. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for the opportunity to share some time with you. I wish you all well and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Our thanks to Will for joining us today and preparing that for us, and leaving us with questions to explore for ourselves and to share with one another. We are going to sing in our way of closing with number 86 in the Gray Hymnal, Blessed Spirit of My Life. Story, as it turns out, was crucial to our evolution. These words from Lisa Crone. Crucial to our evolution. She says, more so than opposable thumbs. Opposable thumbs let us hang on. Story told us what to hang on to. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. The rekindling of our own light, the renewed discovery of our own story, of our intertwined stories, these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We have a couple of announcements, and our thank yous, of course, continue with for Mary's music, to Will, if you're out there, John and Phyllis, and Sherry in the office, and Fauna, thank you, and for putting it, and for everyone present here or elsewhere. We do have here the information that was mentioned in Joys and Concerns about the Ukrainian Bible Church, which is on 223rd and Halsey, so not far from us. They have their services on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock, and it is bilingual. They present it both in Ukrainian and English, which is very cool. There's more information online. I think they have a pretty lively website, Ukrainian Bible Church. There is also a Orthodox Ukrainian group, but more mysterious to us. I don't. In Selwood, okay. But if you have an interest to check on them and see what they might be expressing either on their website or even to drop in and show solidarity, that opportunity is there.
They're asking for donations.
Oh, okay, donations on their website.
Online.
Okay, thank you. And remaining opportunity here with our hope to share coffee after service next Sunday is that you can become a Sunday morning coffee making intern. Or you can revive your coffee making skills if you've done it here with us before. Coffee making volunteers can call the office to find out who is coordinating and training and like that. So do please join us next week. Reverend Patty will be back and speaking on UU rituals, Unitarian Universalist rituals. So that will be very interesting. This concludes today's service. You can visit. Sadly, no coffee yet. We're looking forward to that. Give us that hope. And for those watching online, join us in the Zoom Cafe for conversation time. You folks can exit your YouTube, but you can log in on the Zoom link provided in your chat there or on the website. And folks in the chapel can log in if you want to see who attended and say hello there. And Sherry also logs us on in the office, so you can at least drop in and say hello there. And possibly all of us continue the thoughts that Will left us with going into the week, and our hearts go out across the world. Thank you.